Low-quality fans of a high-quality playoff team, whomever that playoff team may be, welcome to the second round. I know we have one more game to finish in the first round tonight. Likely you'll be seeing this before that game technically starts, if you get on it right away, I suppose. I've had a bit of moonshine today, so work with me here. Work with me! We're going to talk about this series, and I do think that there's a lot of great detail in the previous previews about the series that these teams were included in that also kind of are interesting to listen to. So if this is the first video you're catching the previews, it might behoove you to check out the other ones as well. That's not just me, trying to get more videos watched. I genuinely think there's good information in them. But this Leafs-Panthers series is not one that I predicted. Because I did predict the Panthers to lose, which we'll talk about. It is one that should be a great series. But I said that about the last Panthers series, and oof, this is scary times. These are scary times. We're going to talk about the series from the view of a diehard, Bruins fan! All right, I get to be me for this one. But before we do, let's talk quickly about the way that I did the preview and the way that I kind of focus on this. First of all, I focus far more on the 3 or so months leading up to the playoffs rather than the whole season. So we'll talk about a couple numbers there. If I do bring up any data, it is coming from naturalstattrick.com unless I say otherwise. Home ice means next to nothing for me outside of extreme cases like the Canes. And then I'm going to give predictions at the end. At this point, they're just based on what I put in my bracket because I want to stick with those because let's stay consistent. But like we saw in the Dallas Avalanche series where I predicted a Dallas win and a lot of people dunked on me for that, reasonably so, because on paper, I even said in the preview, on paper, picking Dallas is a fool's errand, but I had a gut feeling. I'm not going to toot my horn that much because, again, I got this Panthers Lightning series so very wrong. Let's talk about the Panthers Leafs. Let's start with how we got here, though. So we'll start with the Leafs. Crisis averted is how we got here. Crisis averted. I enjoyed the little bit of tension last round when Ottawa scraped together a couple of wins, but I had nearly zero doubt that the Leafs would fumble this one away. The conversation about the Leafs leading into that series was their stellar goaltending, their excellent defensive structure, their opportunistic, brilliant star players who are opportunistically scoring because they actually don't create as much offense as you would expect, but they do score at a pretty solid clip for the chances they're creating. And beyond all that, how none of it looked good under the hood. The worst expected goals for percentage at 5-on-5 of the playoff teams when you're looking at the 2 months leading into the playoffs. The worst of the playoff teams. That's not a good sign. They were struggling to earn the most chances. Not the most goals, but earn the most chances throughout these games leading into the playoffs. And we talked about how that's going to give a little spice to this. This series might be just a little bit closer, and I think a 2 versus 7, a second seed versus a 7th seed that goes 6 games and has a little bit of anticipation for that 6th game where you're really like, okay, if they lose this game, this becomes a real mental hurdle that they have to get over. And of course, people like to ignore the fact that the Leafs have gotten to the second round recently, a couple of years back. But for the most part, we're still in that camp of this team cannot win a game 7 and blah, 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 At the end of the day, though, all that under the hood conversation about their expected goals percentage and whatnot, it didn't really matter. And we ended the last preview about the Leafs Senators with this shouldn't matter against this Senators team. Shouldn't matter against this Senators team. It could matter now, I guess is what I'm getting at. Shouldn't matter in the previous one, and it didn't. I did expect those games to be intense, to be very close. Most of them were. But the talent and experience of Toronto was supposed to win out, and it did. What's genuinely funny is all those things that I talked about with the Leafs previously were true throughout this series. They basically stayed the same exact team from the regular season into this matchup, which sounds like, duh. Obviously, that's the way that works. But typically, we actually watch a playoff series, and due to the small sample size, we tend to see a different team analytically. Because maybe the power play gets hot for a second, or penalty kill craters, or goaltending has a tough week, or whatever it might be. But no, even in the small sample size, it stayed exactly the same as what we've been watching. The issues under the hood prevailed, with Ottawa winning the 5-on-5 minutes in expected goals and chance creation, but Toronto still won those minutes on the scoreboard, outscoring Ottawa 12-8 at 5-on-5. Their power play was excellent, scoring at least one power play goal in all but 2 games, and they had a game where they scored 3 of them, while the penalty kill was good enough to prevent any real concerns or issues. When it comes down to it, though, I don't think the first round taught us all that much about the Leafs. They stayed the same team that they were in the regular season. They were facing a team that was ready for their next step, and their next step, Ottawa's next step, was losing to a cup favorite. That was part of the process. Ottawa fans, I don't think they're upset. Obviously, you're bummed when your team gets eliminated, but Ottawa was trekking through the desert for a long time, and they found the city. They're there. They found the oasis. They just have to, get to the higher levels now. And they'll get there. But I don't think Ottawa fans are all that upset. Most of them were pretty resigned to, hey, we got here and we're not a contending team yet, but improvements. What's unfortunate about this, though, is because the first round didn't teach us anything about the Leafs, the first round did teach us something about the Panthers, or at least reminded us of something. The Panthers. How we got here. God help us. This was the one series that I was truly wrong about. All of the other teams that I picked to win have won, other than the Jets so far. And even in that 1-8 matchup, I chose the Jets. But going through the preview, talking about the Blues being the hottest team in the league, all that stuff, if the Jets lose in 7, I'm not going to feel awful about that pick. Or the preview, or I was way off base on it. No, the only series that I felt way off base is the Panthers Lightning series. And not because the Panthers won it. I said the Lightning were going to win in a Game 7 thriller. What I was wrong about is we didn't even get close. I don't care that the Panthers won. I thought it was a coin flip series at best anyway. But the Panthers were also doing what we thought they were and what I was worried about. And I said as much. The Panthers were resting. They were saving themselves for the playoffs. They were not locked in all year. And they made that very evident. The conversation about the Panthers leading into the first round was how they slept, mostly offensively, through large stretches of the regular season. We talked about their offense ranking near the bottom 5 of the league over the last 2 months of the season, but the underlying possession and chance creation numbers showing a team that actually wasn't getting the results they were earning. They really were performing much closer to a team that should be dominating a lot of these games. So maybe they weren't even resting. Maybe it was just bad luck. I don't know. But the offense was slumbering. And then it wasn't. The Lightning were a cup favorite after months of looking like maybe the best team in the East. And then 10 days later, they're packing 14 pairs of underwear for an 8-day trip in the Bahamas. The advanced analytics are kinder than the actual result of the games. But the reality is a 5-game series that, just frankly didn't live up to the hype, as Tampa was outscored 19-12 throughout and largely looked like an afterthought, as early as Game 2. Many of us were really excited about these games. We didn't get a lot of good games out of them. It really wasn't a lot of nail-biters. And a lot of that comes from the Panthers just having it all. The superstar-laden top 6, a goaltender who knows how to win the biggest games, a coach and system that's built for the attrition of a 7-game series, special teams that are capable of stealing games away from opponents, and worst of all, if you're a Leafs fan, they have Brad Marchand in a support role. No one sends the Leafs home quite like Bradley Marchand does. No one. The little ball of hate owns that franchise. And if you're a Leafs fan watching this, and you're getting offended of me saying this, a Bruins fan saying this, I'm sorry, genuinely. You just don't have any evidence of the contrary. Marchand hates you guys and loves beating you guys. and he's damn good at doing it in every way. It's not a good thing for you to not have to face Boston and still somehow find a way to have to face Brad Marchand is what I'm getting at. I'm spending too much time on this point. No, it's not good for the Leafs there. And it's not good for the Leafs because... Well, actually, this is a perfect segue that I've ruined because now I said it's a perfect segue. We're talking about the important factors of the series, and I listed this as big three versus big three, but it's really big guns versus big guns. And this is very similar to what we talked about in the Florida-Tampa series. Because my idea of why the Lightning were going to come out and compete and win by the slimmest of margins in 7 games was because I thought that their top guys would outperform the Panthers' top guys. Vasilevsky would be a little better than Bobrovsky. Kucherov, a little better than Reinhart. Barkov, a little worse than Point. You see where I'm going? Just the star players on the Lightning just being a little better than the star players on the Panthers. And it didn't work out that way at all. It did not work out that way. But the Lightning were top-heavy. The Leafs, pretty top-heavy. Panthers, somewhat top-heavy, but certainly have more depth. The top line for the Leafs has to be great. One of the most important factors for this series. It'll come down to which top 6 outplays the other. The Panthers have more versatility, defensive ability, and physicality at the top of their lineup. Toronto has the stronger playmaking, finishing, finesse. In the playoffs, usually it's the Panthers style that walks away smiling from a matchup like this. And I don't just mean the Panthers team, I mean through history, oftentimes it's the team that has the talent to match you, but also can out-muscle you. And that's the fear for Toronto right now. To compare this to a different series, much like the Golden Knights versus the Wild conversation we had, the Leafs are the Wild in this series. Not that they're outmatched quite the same way, but they need their top line, really their top 4, to not only be better than Florida's top line, which, by the way, boasts 2 Selke Trophy finalists. Good luck. But they have to be so much better that it makes up for the advantages Florida has farther down the lineup, particularly that new look third line for Florida, hosting an emotionally unregulated Brad Marchand, who got traded from a team he spent 16 years with, or however long it actually was. If Florida and Toronto are going best on best, top line versus top line, second line versus second line, then there's no one down the lineup that can truly match up for the Leafs with Lundell, Luosterainen, and Bradley Marchand. It's just not, that line's going to eat. So you need one of your top lines to match not only the line they're facing, but extra on top of that for what that third line's going to produce. It's an impossible ask. It's a very tough task. I'm painting too bleak of a picture, but it's tough. The Panthers have more depth. No one's going to argue with that. Now, I like Toronto's defensive structure a little better. I do. I wouldn't say I trust Stolarz more than I trust Bobrovsky, but I have seen Stolarz be great all year. And Bobrovsky's certainly been really good in moments as well. And, I mean, obviously the playoffs, the past couple of years, he's just done what he's needed in the biggest moments. It's just more than ever, the best Leafs players have to be their best players. Their best players. The best players! And which kind of goes back to the whole, like, they disappeared during the playoffs kind of thing, which isn't actually factually correct for all of them at least, but no, you need Matthews to have a game where he has a hat trick. You need Marner to have a 4-point game in here. You need to have these guys operating at a level that we've not seen them operate at in the playoffs to win this series. We really do. Another very, very important part of this series is clearing the damn puck. Now, when we're talking about the important part of the series, it's almost all leaning towards what Toronto needs to do to win this series. Florida's favored. Florida should be favored. Florida's got the better roster. They've got the better history. We know what this Florida team is. They look terrifying, by the way. When they went through the Lightning in 5, I sat there and went, I don't know how any team beats this Florida team. I don't see it. But the greatest asset that this Panthers team has is their ability to create turnovers in the offensive zone. It's how they've made 2 runs to the finals in a row. It's how they knocked out a record-breaking Bruins team, along with a bunch of injuries to the Bruins. Not that they caused, I'm not doing that whole bit, but like the end of that Bruins season saw a lot of stuff that Bruins fans are very well aware of, and the rest of the league's just like, that record-breaking team lost, and they're ignoring all the nuance. But honestly, even fully healthy, that still might be the end result. Like, that's how good that Panthers team was coming together at that point. They forecheck better than any team on the planet. That's just what they do. And truly better than any team on the planet. Toronto upgraded their blue line both over the summer and at the deadline. If you get clean breakouts through this series, you have a real chance to move on. Like, that's the greatest equalizer you can make right now is clean breakouts. The problem is only one team in the past 2 years has been able to do that consistently against the Panthers. And that team was the Golden Knights in the finals 2 years ago, and they had arguably the best back end in hockey, and were dealing with Florida at maybe 80% health. I don't know if anyone has legitimately over a series been able to clear the puck consistently against this team in the past 2 years. That's how dire this is and how important this is. Good luck. Good luck with it. There is one other really important factor here. And Florida fans are really not going to enjoy this part. The officiating is going to play a role. The officiating has to play a role. Look, it's part of the equation. Florida was once again blessed with some really interesting stuff happening in the first round, and it worked out in their favor. I want to remind everyone that there is no conspiracy trying to help Florida win cups. It's not real. And it's not real for 2 reasons. One, there's simply just not a benefit at this point. Florida has represented the East in 5 finals straight. They don't need a 6th. Like, it just doesn't. What are we actually doing? Why would that be that important for? I say Florida. Tampa did 3 in a row, and then Florida was working on the 3rd. It just doesn't need to be that way. I just simply don't understand why there would be a conspiracy for that. And secondly, the day I believe that the NHL is rigging games is the day I have to stop watching the NHL, because, like, what's the point? It's just not fun anymore. So I'm just not there. All right? If that's copium, then so be it. But the refs are incompetent. That's something that we are very well versed in. We also have the benefit of hindsight and video review and all those good things. But I have obviously noticed, along with everybody else, that Florida is better at getting away with shit. They simply are. Florida also are dirty. They're dirty. They're a genuinely dirty team, right? They get away with more stuff, and they are absolutely, intentionally trying to take players out of the series. Now, Marchand just last year was like, yeah, that's what teams do. That is like a legitimate thing that certain guys on teams do because they want to win the series. Like, let's not act all shocked. I'm not going to sit here as a Bruins fan and be like, I've never benefited from a team that is rough and tough and crossed the line. The Bruins leapt over the line for years. They didn't cross the line. They blew right by the line. And we won a cup out of it. Like, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like Florida's the first one to figure this out, right? It also takes a specific ability to get away with a lot of it. And damn, they do. That's just part of it. One thing I would really appreciate, I don't need an apology. No one needs an apology. We talked about this last year. Lean into it. You're the bad guys, right? I would really appreciate for Panthers fans to stop trying to tell me, like, it's not happening. I have, like, hours and hours and hours of video evidence that it's happening. Your team is dirty. They cross the line. They jump over the line. They intend to injure. All of that is unbelievably factual. Like, that's a real thing. You're not the first team to do it. You won't be the last. Every couple of years, there's a new team that everyone goes like, dirty. And they seem to get away with it more than others. Philly was that team for a long time back in the day. Bruins have obviously had their day with it. Montreal had a team like that for a while. The Islanders quietly were like that for a bit. Every franchise goes through this stage, or most of them do at least. I would appreciate people stop, like, acting like it's not happening. I have eyes. I have eyes and ears, and I can see these things. Anyway, we're taking too long on this, but this is a very important part of the series because depending on the way this is officiated, and depending on who stays on their feet, because this will be a battle of attrition. It's the playoffs. It always is. People like to act like that's a foreign concept as well. No. That's part of it. Toronto has an excellent power play, a really good one, and one that's hot right now. Florida has an excellent penalty kill. I don't think Florida would enjoy testing which one is better a bunch. I don't think they would. They want this to come down to 5-on-5 play because that's where they've been better than Toronto in pretty much every way. It benefits them tremendously to keep this at even strength as much as possible. I mean, obviously we could talk about the inverse of like, well, Florida has a decent power play too, and the Toronto's penalty kill goes in waves. Like sometimes it's terrible, sometimes it's decent. So we could talk about it in the reverse, but we know the physical kind of game that Florida plays. If the league is taking a closer look and they're going to start calling more blah, 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 it doesn't benefit Florida. It's something that could really help Toronto even the series. Frankly, what I think we're going to get, I think Toronto's going to try to sell a lot of calls. I think that's going to be part of it. This reputation has been well earned by Florida. It's been a huge part of who they are. And Tampa tried it in the last round. They had a couple moments where I was like, that's kind of a dive. They also had some moments where they got smoked through the chin by an elbow. Like, there were both of them. So I think if the refs are a little whistle happy, especially early in the series, it really benefits Toronto. And I think Toronto needs to win 2 of the first 3 games to really have a chance here. Preferably taking care of home ice, where Florida is closer to 500. I know I've said before that home ice doesn't really matter that much to me, but Toronto has been exceptional on home ice. Florida has been half decent on away ice. So we'll see how that goes. But Toronto needs to win 2 of the first 3. I don't think they can come back in this series if they're down. My prediction. Easy part now. Look, I chose the Leafs to go to the Cup Finals this year on my bracket, mostly off vibes. I said this really a couple of years ago, but I said this on a public platform. I can't remember if it was on this channel or on the podcast, Short Shift podcast. But if the Leafs had Carlo or a guy like Carlo, they would win the Cup. So now I'm just going to stick with it. Make fun of me if I'm wrong. I'm not doing the fence sitting thing here. I am choosing the Leafs to win this series. That being said, I can't see how the Leafs win this series. I just can't. I can't envision it. Florida looks too physical, too fast, too heavy, too healthy, too aggressive, too skilled, too physical. They're too physical. And frankly, I just think they're a little too physical for literally anyone in the league to properly combat them in a 7-game series. That's how high I think about this Panthers team. I think they're going to bully ball their way through again. And they've earned this respect. They've been a brilliant team for years, and they're just built on mean and nasty, and they just got meaner and nastier. Shit, man, this is an uphill battle before the puck even drops. I mean, this feels like the USSR versus the 1980 college Olympic team. Now, remember who won that? So, no, seriously, I have no idea how the Leafs win this. But Leafs in 6, because if it goes to 7, obviously, you know what happens there. I don't feel good about any of this. I really don't. Go Leafs, go. And of course, here at the end of the video, I love to give some shout outs to the fantastic high quality inspectors who help support the channel and keep this running. I super appreciate every single one of you, from the role player tier, the top line tier, and of course the all-star tier. We are going to do our shout outs for this top line tier. Thank you so much to Sean Kreider, Michael Kammerer, Chris and Erica, Kevin Timperley, Quack and Platypus, JM, Smoke Channels, Shaggy, Adam Ella, Albert Waldron, Negev79, Lola Cattingsworth, EKM Productions, Moonlighter TV, Big Bad Bruin, The Bugman, Jeff with a G, Tommy Braga, Roland22, GD Viperworks, Len Kreutz, Brock Nope, Hans Slobo, Coach D, The Atomic Lizard, Bradley Johnson, Brett Arney, Pinsent, and Nick Zatrullo. Thank you so much, each and every one of you. Your top line material. But now we got to move on to our all-star tier members, the absolute legends. We have Jacob Pratt, Jake Brower, Dampen, JG's 12, Mark S., Ann Hustis, Tim R., Lorenzo Wood, Penny Pasta, Levi Catalani, Boston Stringler, Bagel, Nightmare Eco, John Kirk, Joel, Stealthy Potato, Heil E. Coyote, Darren Woodbury, Abraxion, Wolf Warrior, Vinny, Adrian Winter, Tukton D. Tashi, Bruin Smash, D.A. Kingery, The Only Newts, A Tasty Snack, Dutes42, and Jeremy. Thank you all for all of the support and love that you are all giving. I appreciate each and every one of you. And as always, go Bees!